Everyone knew Boots Ennis could dominate. That was never the question. But the real question was what happens when dominance gets interrupted. Against Zayas, round 3 gave us the answer. Boots did not shrink. He recalculated and then he dominated. So Boots was not exposed against Zayas. He was tested. There is a difference. His jab worked early. His switch hitting controlled the fight. Then discomfort arrived in round 3. That moment, it actually revealed something important. Not weakness, but recovery, discipline, and gear changes. And that kind of offensive fighter becomes more dangerous under pressure. So before we give you the other perspectives, I want to give you my perspective on what I thought. And I thought Boots was elite. He dominated the fight from the very, very beginning. His jab was effective. The switch hitting was impeccable. And the crucial thing is that he changed gears when necessary. Yes, he got caught. He did get caught, but this is a byproduct of being an offensive-minded fighter. And I think the credit should be given on how Boots managed the discomfort in the 3rd round. And in the 4th round, he leveled up. And in the 5th and in the 6th, he dominated. He fought a courageous champion and he passed the test. So now I'm going to give my perspective on some of the statements that have been made. And the reference point here is the Ring magazine. So one of the statements, or the first statement that was made, was a question really. What does being tested, what does it really mean for a fighter as advanced as Boots? And did round 3 reveal anything that we did not know? So there's a few things there. There's an acknowledgement that Boots is advanced. I agree with that because he is an elite fighter. When we say tested, what does it mean? Well, in round 3, he was caught on 2 occasions with hard punches. And I believe that those hard punches, they hurt him. When you look at the legs, they had a sufficient impact. And in that round, which was round 3, what did it reveal? Well, it revealed that Boots has perseverance and he's mentally strong because he was able to maintain his composure. He did not panic. That could have been the beginning of the end had he panicked and gave more offensive opportunities to Zayas. So, like I said, I agree that Boots is advanced. I would say he's elite. And I think that round 3 revealed part of his personality, part of his character. He's not going to quit under pressure. When it gets hard, he's going to still be there. And I think that that's a positive thing. And the next statement is that at the elite level, is there a real difference between being buzzed or being hurt? And does that distinction change how the performance should be judged? Is there a difference between being buzzed or hurt? So if you're buzzed, are you not hurt? If you're hurt, are you not buzzed? I guess, for example, you can get hit by a punch and that could hurt you, but you might not be buzzed. And I guess by default, if you're buzzed, maybe you're not hurt because you're in an altered state. That's more like a philosophical question. I think there were 2 separate occasions when Boots was hit by the right hand. So maybe it was a combination of both. I think he was hurt at one point. And then I think I don't know how long it was, but I think he was actually buzzed as well. So he may have experienced both sensations. How should the performance have been judged? Well, I think when you look at that performance, when someone's hurt and when someone's buzzed, and I think there's an important distinction to make here. I think when you're hurt, it's easy to conceal, but when you're buzzed, it's harder to conceal because your legs will be the giveaway. There'll be physical indications of when you're buzzed, while when you're hurt, mentally, the dialogue in your mind says, oh, that was a hard punch. but you can conceal that. A good example of that is when Evander Holyfield fought George Foreman. In the second round, he was hit. When I say he, Evander Holyfield was hit with a left uppercut. And Evander Holyfield, in hindsight, when he went back to the round, thought that George Foreman knocked his teeth out. He was hurt in that moment, but he may not have been buzzed. And that's the reason why, to the outsiders looking in, he was able to conceal that. So there definitely is a difference. But what does it mean? What does it reveal? Again, it reveals that when things get difficult, Boots Ennis doesn't crumble. And how should the performance be judged? In one sense, you can argue that it's actually better than a totally dominant performance, because it means that Boots Ennis is not just an on-top fighter. When he gets hit, when he gets buzzed or hurt or both, he reacts, and he reacts accordingly. And it shows that he can adapt. He can adapt when hurt. So I think in a sense, he's passing the test in terms of not just the elite test of being an elite operator, but he's passing the test of having good character, having courage and mental strength. And the next statement is a good one. What does the constant criticism of an undefeated champion say about boxing's impossible expectations? So there's two main phrases there: constant criticism and impossible expectations. I think to a certain extent, both those premises are true. I think there is constant criticism, and I think there are expectations that are they objectively impossible? I would say that they're unreasonable. And the question is why? Why are the expectations in boxing? Why are they ridiculous? Why are they unreasonable? In one sense, you could argue that if you're an elite boxer, then the expectations are elite. But there's a problem with this, because Boots Ennis is an offensive-minded boxer. He throws a lot of punches, which means there's more opportunities for him to be hit. So criticizing Boots Ennis being hit and being hurt, but then coming back, to hold that as a criticism seems unfair. Now, of course, there's context here, because clearly if he's getting hit too much, then you say, yes, he's an offensive-minded fighter, but he has to be more defensively responsible. I get that. But being hit and hurt in the third round and then coming back and making the adaptations, using that as just a complete criticism, I think is putting the expectations too high. But at the same time, I acknowledge that elite boxers will have elite expectations. But I think those expectations need to be reasonable. And then the next statement is, how much of Boots' delayed rise is a pound-for-pound figure? Does this show boxing system failing him rather than him failing to force the issue? That's an interesting statement, because I'm not sure if that premise is correct. Is it a delayed rise? I think his rise has been quite prominent, so I'm not sure about that. What I would say is that when you rise in boxing, it's not just about what you do in the ring, it's also what you do outside it. So, for example, boxing is not just about the performances. Boxing is about the matchmaking and the marketing, and it's about the machine you have behind you. For example, Mo Zatama, I believe, has elite capabilities. For example, he has elite footwork, a great southpaw jab. He goes through the phases really, really well. But he also has a phenomenal machine behind him. And that's important, because if you're a great fighter, but you don't have a great machine, are you able to rise? Now, I would say that Boots Ennis does have a great machine behind him. And I need to look into that, because I'm not sure if that premise is true. I'm not sure if that premise is true. I'm not sure if it's delayed. And again, does this fall into the expectation thing? Are we, obviously when elite fighters or when boxers are becoming elite, that's going to be a process of evolution, and that process takes time. You know what? I'm probably wrong about the previous point. Let's assume that that premise is correct and the rise has been delayed. But at the same time, I think we also need to acknowledge that evolution takes time, and the machine behind you, that takes time, and negotiating contracts takes time. So I think there's some truth in all of that, potentially. So the next statement is, what does it say about the division? What does it say about the division when avoiding boots has become the smartest move for most champions? I think this is a perspective statement. So I think from a boxing purist perspective, it's not the smartest move, because we want to see the great fights. We want to see the great fights. But what about the perspective of the promoter of the fighter, or the team of the fighter, or the trainer of the fighter? From an opposition's team's perspective, or from a managerial perspective, or from a promoter's perspective, fighting Boots is a risk. Why is it a risk? It's a risk because Boots is an elite fighter, therefore there's a greater risk that you can lose. Therefore, what justifies the risk? Money and cultural impact. And that money has to be substantial. And depending on your psychology as a fighter, that cultural impact needs to be substantial. But if you look at the connotation of this statement, the connotation that avoiding Boots is a smart move is actually a great compliment to Boots. So here is my final statement, and it's basically a reiteration of what I said earlier. Think of this. Boots showed levels. From the start, he made the fight his. His jab from the orthodox and from the southpaw position, it set the tone. The switch hitting kept him unpredictable. When the moment called for patience, he showed it. When it called for pressure, he raised it. Getting caught was part of the risk. What stood out was his composure after it. By the middle rounds, the gap was clear. He beat a brave champion and proved that he is elite. So that's the end of the video. Now I'm trying to build a digital boxing community. That means I'm interested in your comments, I'm interested in your questions, and I'm interested in your observations. Now, if you want to support the channel, simply like and subscribe and click the hype button. And if you want to watch more content like this, then simply click here or click here. As always, thanks for your time. It is much appreciated.